Hello and welcome to Kavlan B. In this video, we are going to calculate an exciting and a unique market sizing problem based on India's medical imaging equipment market. Now, such kind of guesstimates are used particularly in case studies. For example, there is a market entry case where a US-based equipment manufacturer wants to enter India's medical imaging market. So, while analyzing the entire strategy, we have to look into the market size, the growth rate, and different opportunities through which that manufacturer can actually capture a significant percentage of market share. So, overall, it becomes important to look into different approaches, assumptions, and the calculation to get to a closer approximated value. We can't get an accurate number, but with logic and sound assumptions, we can get to a close number. But in such cases, it is important that we address a real targeted market and not the overall scenario. We will discuss this later on. But let's start with our question statement. So, we need to estimate the annual market size of medical imaging equipment in India. Here, the medical imaging equipment includes CT scanners, which are used for detailed cross-sectional imaging, MRI machines for soft tissue visualizations, X-rays, which are the backbone of diagnostics, and also ultrasound machines for real-time imaging. If I define the scope, then we are going to calculate annual sales value, not the installed base value. Base value is basically the machines which are currently in operation at different sites, and the sales value is the number of units that are being sold in India annually and in terms of their monetary value, and which includes new equipment as well as the replacement equipment. We are going to consider all the buyer segment within all tiers, cities, and domestic as well as import, but that doesn't really change our perspective. What I'm going to do is I'm going to consider a bottom-up approach with a principal formula being annual market size equals annual unit demand multiplied by the weighted average price. Now here the annual unit demand is coming from two sources. First, the replacement, and second, the new demand. Replacement demand is from the established infrastructure, hospitals and centers where they already have machines and they are upgrading for a new one with better features, better technology, or the existing one has completed its life cycle. And the new demand is coming from new infrastructure which are developing, or an existing one is expanding and they are bringing in the new machines. And the weighted average price is basically the equipment mix based weighted average, that is what percentage is CT, what percentage is X-ray, and so on. So if I discuss the approach, it is not a traditional population based approach like we do in our did in our previous videos. Here the first thing we are going to do is we are going to identify all the buyer segment, who are the potential customers who will buy these types of machines, and from that we will estimate the total installed base in terms of unit. And since when we will have the installed base, from that we will consider the replacement demand and the growth demand, which will give us the annual demand in total. Now from this annual demand, we will determine the equipment mix, that is what percentage of this annual demand is coming from X-ray machines, what from ultra, and so on. And from that equipment mix, we will calculate the weighted average price. Now we have the unit sold and the weighted average price, and when we will multiply both of them, we will get the market size. Now before starting into calculation, let us understand who actually buys these kind of machine. So hospitals are obvious buyers, multi-speciality, super speciality, government hospitals, and even small nursing homes. But people often miss major segments like diagnostic centers, which represent a significant portion and are the fastest growing segment within all of these. Also, there are other private clinics, research and education institution, and mobile imaging units, veterinary clinics, and even industrial use. So this is an exhaustive list of all kinds of buyers who will buy these equipments, not just the hospitals. Now let us begin with the hospitals because they are the foundation. So in order to calculate the installed base value, I will have to determine the total number of hospitals that are present and who actually have these equipments. So I'm going to divide the total cities into three tiers. Tier 1 are the 8 metro cities, tier 2 50 major cities, and tier 3 100 small cities. So large hospitals in tier 1 cities are approximately 80 to 100 per city, so 700 in total. Small hospitals are around 200 per city, so 1600, and we will get 2300 total hospitals. In tier 2, I'm assuming 20 large hospitals per city, so 1000, 50 per small hospitals, so 2500, and total 3500. In tier 3, 10 hospitals are large, so 1000 in 100 cities, 30 small, so 3000, total 4,000. Adding up segment wise, so large hospitals in total are around 2,700, small hospitals are total 7,100, and overall total are nearly 10,000. But every hospital does not have same number of equipments. Large hospitals have more, small have less. So we need to determine how much is that composition. So in large hospital, I'm assuming there are 2 CT scan machines, 2 MRI machines, 10 X-ray and 6 ultrasound. In total, 20 units per hospital, which is exhaustive enough to meet the demand. In small hospitals, I'm assuming 0.3 CT machines per hospital. That is only 30% of total small hospital have CT machines, and that to 5% of them have MRI, 2 X-ray machines per hospital, and 2 ultrasound. So total 4.35 units per hospital. So segment wise, we had 2,700 total large hospital multiplied by 20 units, we will get 54,000 units. Small hospitals, which were 7,100, and 4.35 units per hospital, so 30,885 units. In total, we will get approximately 85,000 units. But since we looked that the total demand is coming from different sources and not just hospitals, so let us calculate the other sources. And here I'm going to assume that the major hospitals are 75% of the total installed base. That is, the rest 25% is coming from all the other sources as we discussed. So 75% of total is 85,000. Total installed value we'll get is approximately 1,15,000. Now, out of these 1,15,000 units, we need to determine how many of them are actually getting replaced every year. So X-ray gets replaced in every 8 to 10 years. So annual replacement is 10 to 12%. Ultrasound 6 to 8 years with replacement of 12 to 15%. And likewise, if we calculate a weighted average, we will get an annual replacement of approximately 12%. Now, multiplying this 12% with our installed base value, which was 1,15,000, we will get 13,800 units getting replaced every year. Now, to this replacement demand, we need to add new demand. And new demand is coming from various drivers like government initiatives, Ayushman Bharat and Jan Arogya Yojana, which are building infrastructures. Also, new hospitals, 200 to 250 are adding up annually, needing 15 to 20 imaging units. 600 to 800 new diagnostic centers are opening. Also, facilities gets upgraded and tier 2, tier 3 penetration is bolstering. So the average healthcare infrastructure is growing about 5 to 7% annually, which is driving a 5 to 7% growth in imaging equipment demand also. So I'm going to consider an average growth rate of around 6%. So 6% of 1,50,000, 15,000 is 6,900. So this 6,900 is the demand from the new category. Now, if we add up both of these, that is replacement and new growth demand, we'll get the total annual demand to be around 20,700 units. Now, this is our base value, 20,700 units. From this 20,700 units, we need to determine what percentage is coming from X-ray, what percent from Ultra, CT, and MRI. So let us break down by equipment. Here I'm assuming most of the growth is coming from X-ray machines, around 58%, that is 12,000 units. From ultrasound, it is coming around 29%, so 6,000 units. From CT, around 10%, 2,000 units, and MRI just 3%, 620 units, because these are expensive. Now we have the percentage breakdown. Now, in order to calculate the weighted average price, we need to know the average selling price of all these different equipments. So an X-ray machine is sold for around $20,000, ultrasound machines for $50,000, CT for 100,000, and MRI for 600,000. This is their average selling price. If we multiply these by their percentage demand, we'll get the weighted average. So the final weighted average comes out to be around $54,000. Now we have the total units sold and we have the weighted average of these equipments. If we will multiply both of them, we will get the total market size. So if we multiply 20,700 by 54,000, we'll get approximately 1.1 billion US dollars. But here it gets interesting. This is not our final market size. This entire medical imaging market is not just about the equipments. There are other services and aftermarket revenues as well. This equipment sale of 1.1 billion represents only 60% of the market. The other 40% is coming from other services and aftermarkets, like annual maintenance contracts, which are typically 7 to 10% of equipment cost per year, covering preventive maintenance, parts, and labors. Also, there are spare parts and labors, things like imagining plates, ultrasound transducers, and X-ray tubes. There are upgrades and retrofits, which are software upgrades and hardware enhancement that extend the equipment life without actually getting replacement. So if we add all these 40% market revenue, we'll get the final answer to be around 1.8 to 2 billion dollars. So this is our final market size. Now, if we take a different approach to calculate this, we can consider the total GDP of India and a percentage share of that GDP from healthcare. From that percentage share, we can derive what percentage is coming from equipment sales and especially medical imaging equipments, and we can reach this final answer. But it is not a absolute or accurate number. If we take a different approach, a population based or supply side, the range might vary, but this is the total market size in overall. And as I said, we need to consider the addressable market whenever we are calculating an opportunity for a client. Let's say, as I discussed, a US manufacturer wants to enter India's market, but we have to look into what target segment that manufacturer is considering. Is it premium segment, mid-tier segment, or low-tier segment? If it is just targeting the premium, then this 2 billion number is just a wide range for that market. Only 10 to 20% is the addressable market, which will be the premium segment. So this wide number looks like a great opportunity, but when we look into the addressable market, it is only just 20% of this. So while analyzing in a market entry case, it is important we always look into the addressable targeted demand, which will cater the client's perspective and client's business. I'm actually mentioning this because in one of my case I made a mistake and it costed me. So keep in mind always while calculating the market size, keep keep in the back of your head that you are addressing the actual market for the client's demand. So this was it for this video. If you think you will learn something, make sure you like the video and subscribe. Thanks.